Come with me back to 2008, Kansas City, Missouri. I was early in my career, maybe 2 or 3 years in. Those years are pretty blurry because I was going through a pretty extensive training program to transition from being a generalist project manager in a digital marketing agency to moving into a strategic role doing search engine optimization. I had just gone through some extensive training in Los Angeles and Silicon Valley with some of the best experts in the industry, and I'm forever thankful to my employer at that time for investing in me to get me trained up to do that. We're at a point now where I've taken over the SEO role as an SEO analyst in this agency and have been given my first few clients. Using all that best practice information I'd learned and some of the strategic elements, using some of the best tools on earth, I'm working through the process with one of my brand new clients, a personal injury attorney and criminal defense attorney there locally in Kansas City. He had a lot of different focuses, but we narrowed it down to his criminal defense side first for his firm as what he wanted to rank well for on Google and to drive leads through his website. Working through the process, just a few months in, I was super excited. I'm preparing the reports because back then there weren't real-time dashboards pulling in attribution information, but printing out some of these awesome reports on the high gloss, fancy paper, stapling them perfectly, getting them set up in the conference room with his website and Google Analytics up on the screen. I walk him back to the conference room. We sit down. I'm so excited to walk through this report that's got everything green and up and to the right with all the graphs. I start walking through, excitedly, through rankings for some of the key terms that mattered for him that we had targeted and that he agreed to up front in our strategy phase. What I thought was a strategy phase, more on that in a moment. We walk through web traffic, and we even look at his web conversions through form submissions as well as tracked phone calls. I get toward the end and I realize in all of my excitement, I'm walking through all this and I'm not taking a breath or having a beat to see what his reaction is. We get to the end and he looks up at me, slides the report back to the middle of the table and says, "Corey, that's all great, but I didn't get a single new case from any of this. And I've spent a lot of money over these first few months, and if I don't get a case, we're not going to be able to continue working together." That was a stomach drop moment for me as I was looking for the opposite reaction from him. So I took a step back. I agreed to revisit things, politely walked him out of the office, visited with my mentor, and realized that I had totally missed the mark in terms of matching up his goals with what my goals were for the strategy and the scope that we were working through. Fast forward, I have a chance to go meet with him at his office. We sit down, we work through what actually matters to his business and not just what matters to his marketing metrics or my marketing metrics. After working through and understanding what makes a qualified lead, what turns into a case, and how the business works overall, we were able to get through to a new level of understanding of how to reverse engineer this and work through everything to make sure that I had the right plan for him and that we weren't going to just have a bunch of empty marketing metrics and KPIs in the next report. So I'm happy to report that I was able to get things fine-tuned and understand his business well enough that a couple of months later we were driving the right fit leads and clients to his firm. What I didn't realize in that time was that I was doing the very first version of what I call the Digital Marketing Success Plan. And so that's the basis of my new book, the Digital Marketing Success Plan. It wasn't called that until just in the past year, but I'm excited that all of the years since I've had the chance to refine this and really put together a framework that doesn't feel like a haphazard rush into Google Ads or search engine optimization or social media. And so I'm going to unpack the 5-step process, the START planning framework, which is an acronym. And this program has resulted in millions and millions of dollars delivered for clients in ROI and not just flimsy vanity marketing metrics. So the first of the 5 steps is S for strategy. Strategy is critically important to get right, and it's no surprise that it's in here. A lot of different firms and agencies, mine included over the years, have said we're going to do a digital strategy, and that's the right first step. But often the strategy doesn't define or dictate where we're going, or doesn't get everyone on the same page. And so strategy is critical when I talk about this to make sure that we get stakeholders on the right page, everyone from C-suite or ownership down through marketing, to make sure we understand what ROI is, how we're going to define success, and that if there's any political battles or battles between sales and marketing or product teams or brand issues, that we have those sorted or understood up front. We also need to understand what's working and what's not. So I love to do auditing in this step as well and have a framework as a sub-step in here in this phase for auditing and understanding what your strengths are currently, what your weaknesses are, as well as understanding what your biases are toward different marketing channels or things that work versus those that might not have as much familiarity in your organization. So working through that and understanding and getting on the same page and alignment on strategy is critical because it will flow through the rest of the steps and the phases. When we have that locked in and understand what ROI looks like, we're now moving into tactics, and that is the T in START. Tactics should never come ahead of strategy, but there are so many times and stories of companies and brands that come to me where I realize they're really just doing a checklist of tactics without any subordination to a strategy to understand, is this working or not? Or you take a year to spend a lot of money on certain tactics and then find out that they didn't really drive to that ultimate goal. So this is also the phase where we want to look at what's working now, as well as figuring out if there's anything else that maybe we haven't tried that we should put on the board. This is the phase where trying things or investigating new things and channels is cheap. So maybe you love Google ads and they work, but have you invested in content marketing? Have you looked at SEO? Have you looked at some of maybe even the social media channels that maybe you don't personally use or don't think would work? Maybe programmatic advertising is an avenue. Putting everything on the board, using some of the leading tools to look at projections and media projections and opportunities, and seeing how your funnel and customer journey stacks up is important, because you might think that, well, social doesn't do anything. Well, maybe it doesn't from a last click attribution standpoint, but maybe it's a great opener and lead in to some of your other marketing channels as well. So getting your tactics lined out and mapped out is critical at that second phase. The third phase, the A, is application. And this is where we're looking at getting into what we actually have in terms of our assets. So evaluating your website, looking at your creative, looking at some of your messaging and offerings. If you're doing any type of advertising, what your ads look like and the design and aspects of them, and coming back to your brand, your message, and your product development. This is where it's tempting to just start diving in, especially if you are a creative, and designing things. Resist that temptation. We're doing an inventory at this point and planning out what you're going to need. I see things stall out often in the planning phases right here, where it's like, okay, we need a new website. Okay, we're gonna go spend 10 months building the website, but we didn't finish setting our plan and our goals to understand fully what this website needs to do for us. So working through the inventory and assets that you need is the application phase. Next, we move into the R, which is review. And this is taking a look at your current business intelligence information, your dashboards, your reporting, your Google GA4, Google Analytics, and making sure that you have a reporting system that isn't just something out of the box that is going to give you some base level metrics, but it's actually configured to measure ROI back to what your ultimate goal and strategy is connected to. By default, no system can know the full ROI and picture of what you're investing in your in-house team, what your payroll is for them, what software you're using and the cost involved with it, any contractors, freelancers, or marketing agencies and resources you use. So getting that holistic picture and getting attribution right, especially in an era where there's a lot of upheaval and back and forth on whether third-party cookies and different data is going away, is important to have that right. In many cases, if you don't have it right out of the gate, you can't recover some of that data and information to make you smarter down the road. The final phase is transformation. Transformation phase is where we're pulling this all together. You may have, on paper, a documented plan coming together at this point, or it may be digital, where you've documented everything up through this process. But transformation is where we're planning out the resources and putting a plan into action that will allow us to follow through and make sure that we see this thing through when we're ready to implement the plan. This is whether it's a project management system, a resource planning system, or even just an old-fashioned calendar, making sure that you have your resources lined out and you're ready to go on the intervals you want to get to the ROI goals from your strategy phase is important. The last thing you want to do is say, okay, we're ready to go, and then one of your key resources is out for parental leave, or someone is sick, or they're booked for 6 months and can't touch your project. And so being able to understand that, have everybody committed to what their obligations are and their accountabilities within the digital marketing plan is important. And so at the end of the start phases, you're now at what I call your own digital marketing success plan. These can take on different forms. I've got a great example outline in the Digital Marketing Success Plan book to help it feel more tangible, and there are resources at thedmsp.com that will help you with templates along the way. But you're not done. You might feel like you're done. If this took you 3 weeks or 3 months to get through, now you're ready to implement. The reason that you want a digital marketing success plan is that I could tell you numerous stories, and there are 7 or 8 in my book, about where things fall apart without a plan. If it's just in someone's head, or there are 5 different opinions on what our goal is, or if we're as distracted as ever, it's critical to stay on track. Whether it's distractions because we get busy and we're wearing 5 hats in our role in our business, or we get a drive-by by our CEO saying, well, what about we try this audience or test this out? Then you can get off track, and the last thing anyone wants to do is look back a year into their marketing investment or look annually at what their ROI is and realize that all you really have are some excuses for why you didn't get too far or far enough in any different area because you were just running all over the place, zigzagging based on different goals. And I made it this far in this presentation talking about digital marketing without even mentioning AI. So AI has disrupted things, but the constant going back to before we even called it digital marketing, when we were online marketing and internet marketing, is that it has been change. There's always been change and disruption. And so there will be continued change and disruption in this industry. And so there will be shiny objects to chase all the time. And the industry will force you to change, and hopefully you are adapting with it without putting your head in the sand and ignoring it. So there's a balance between what's working today and what's going to work tomorrow, and finding that and not being distracted. So anytime we have a competitor change, a product change, a sales focus change, a disruption in the industry, a new technology emerge, I call those trigger events. So having a documented, accountable plan and working the plan is critical to start with, because you're going to have trigger events show up. And those trigger events will be a moment to go back to the plan and say, does this change how we budget, how we allocate any of our assets and our strategic resources, or do we just keep going the way we had planned? And so trigger events will happen, and without a plan, you're likely just going to chase one. And ultimately, when you come back to look at ROI on a longer term basis, you're not going to see what you're looking for. So implementing that plan, having an objective, having it somewhere, not put on a shelf and ignored, is critical no matter what shape and form your plan takes on and looks like. I'd love to be able to dig into everyone's plan, but ultimately they all will look different. So as I mentioned, I've got some great resources to be able to show you how to document your own plan. The most critical thing is to have a plan that has enough agility built in and balance that you don't fall behind, but at the same time that you're not just aimlessly working through your digital marketing and your strategy. My goal is for you, even though it seems like a silly little story with a small budget back in 2008, and felt like a big milestone career thing then, when I made some mistakes out of ignorance with that client. My goal is that if you're in a bigger organization and with many more dollars at stake today that Google will take, agencies and consultants will take, software will take, whether your plan is working or not, is that you don't run into some of those same mistakes that early career Corey Morris, the analyst, made in 2008. I hope that you get your own digital marketing success plan and plan your pathway to success.